David was an ordinary man living in a busy city. He worked in a small office where he spent most of his days typing on a computer and answering phone calls. Life was simple but often tiring. He didn't have many close friends, and most evenings, he stayed alone in his small apartment. Sometimes he wondered if there was more to life than just work and routine. One night, after finishing his late shift, David was walking home through the quiet streets. The city lights were bright, but the streets felt empty and cold. He was tired and ready to rest. Suddenly, something unusual caught his eye. Near a small park, a woman stood alone, looking lost and scared. Her clothes were strange and shiny, unlike anything David had seen before. Her skin had a soft glow, and her eyes were bigger than usual, shining with a curious light. David hesitated for a moment. He felt a mix of fear and curiosity. People didn't usually stand alone like that, at night especially not dressed in such unusual clothes. But the woman didn't look dangerous. She looked scared and confused. David took a deep breath and walked toward her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The woman looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. I don't know," she said, softly. Her voice was calm but carried a strange melody. "I am lost." David wanted to help, but didn't know how. "Where are you from?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Not from here." Her words made David even more curious. "I am from far away. Very far away." David didn't understand, but he nodded. "Well, this is Earth. You're safe here. Do you want me to help you?" The woman's face relaxed a little. "Yes, please, I need help." David looked around. It was late, and there was no one else nearby. He knew it was risky, but he couldn't just leave her alone. He decided to take her to his apartment, where she could rest and feel safe. At first, the woman was quiet and watched everything carefully. When they reached David's small home, she looked around with amazement. Everything was so different from her world, she said later. She sat down on his couch, still uncertain but less afraid. David gave her some water and a simple meal. She ate slowly, still looking strange to him, but he felt a strong connection growing between them. It was like she was someone very important, but lost. As the night went on, she told David bits of her story. She said her name was Lyra. She came from a world far beyond the stars, a place filled with colors and lights that humans could not imagine. Her people were peaceful but strong, and they watched many worlds from afar. David listened carefully, amazed by her words. At first, he thought it was a dream or a story, but her sadness and hope felt real. She told him she had been sent to find someone who had once promised to return but had left her behind. David felt confused. He didn't remember any promise like that. Lyra's eyes searched his face, as if looking for answers inside him. For hours, they talked quietly. David learned that Lyra was not just lost in the city, she was lost in her heart too. She had traveled a great distance, facing dangers and loneliness, just to find the one who had left her. David's mind raced with questions. Could it be possible that he had forgotten something so important? Or was Lyra mistaken? The night grew deeper, but neither of them wanted to stop talking. They both felt that this meeting was not by chance. Something bigger was at play, something they needed to understand together. By morning, David knew his life had changed forever. He could no longer ignore the strange, glowing woman in his apartment or the feeling that his past held secrets he had yet to uncover. Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes full of hope. "Thank you, David," she said softly, "for listening, for caring." David smiled back, feeling both fear and excitement. "We'll figure this out," he promised, and so began, A story of two very different beings, brought together by fate, searching for answers across worlds. Days passed since David first met Lyra, the strange woman from another world. At first, their time together was quiet and filled with small moments of discovery. David showed her simple things from Earth, the taste of tea, the sound of rain, on the window, the comfort of a warm blanket. Lyra watched everything with wide eyes, as if seeing the world for the very first time. Slowly, their connection grew deeper. They spent hours talking about their lives, their dreams, and the worlds they came from. Lyra told David about her home, a beautiful place far beyond the stars. She described skies that glowed with many colors, forests filled with strange creatures, and cities built with shining crystals. It was a place where her people lived peacefully, caring for nature and each other. David listened in wonder. The stories felt like magic, but the sadness in Lyra's voice was very real. She kept returning to one question, one pain that never left her heart. "Why did you leave me, David?" she asked quietly one evening, her eyes searching his face. David felt a sharp pain in his chest. He didn't understand why she said this. He had never planned to leave anyone behind, at least not that he remembered. But her words made something inside him stir, a feeling of loss and regret he had tried to ignore. Lyra explained that long ago, David had been part of her world. For a time, he had lived among her people. They had shared moments of joy and hope. But then, something happened. David left without saying goodbye, and Lyra was left alone, waiting for him. David tried to remember, but his mind was a blank. He had no memory of that life. It was as if his past had been erased. Yet Lyra's eyes told him the truth. She believed in their connection, and she had come all this way to find him. The days grew warmer as their friendship turned into something stronger. David began to feel a strange sense of belonging with Lyra. It was like she had awakened a part of him that had been asleep for years. They laughed together, shared meals, and even went for walks in the quiet parks near his home. But life was not simple. David worried about what others would think if they knew about Lyra. She was different, not just in appearance, but in her very being. He feared the questions, the fear, even the danger that might come if people discovered her secret. Lyra understood these fears but was determined to stay. She said she would face anything as long as David was with her. "I have traveled across the stars for this moment," she said softly. "I will not turn back." One night, as they sat under the open sky, David asked her about the promise she mentioned, the one he had forgotten. Lyra's eyes shone with emotion. "Long ago, before you came to Earth, you promised to protect our world and to return when we needed you. You were a bridge between our worlds, but you left, and I waited." David felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. The idea that he had a role so important and yet had abandoned it was hard to accept. But the truth was clear. Something in his past connected him to Lyra's people, and now that connection had brought her to his doorstep. Together, they started to search for answers. David looked through old journals, photographs, and memories, hoping to find a clue to his forgotten past. Lyra taught him about her culture, her language, and her technology, which seemed like magic to him. As they learned from each other, they also faced challenges. Some people noticed Lyra's strange behavior and appearance. David had to keep her hidden, and they both knew this could not last forever. One evening, Lyra shared a story about her daughter, a young alien girl who was missing. The pain in her voice was clear. It was her daughter's safety that made her so desperate to find David. She believed he was the only one who could help. David felt a new sense of purpose. He was no longer just an ordinary man living a simple life. He was part of something bigger, a connection between two worlds, a protector, a friend, and maybe more. Their days were filled with hope, but also fear. They both knew that finding Lyra's daughter would not be easy, but they were ready to face the unknown together. David and Lyra stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The past was a mystery, but the future was theirs to shape. Life became more complicated for David and Lyra as time passed. Lyra's presence on Earth was not easy to hide. She was different, not only in her appearance but also in how she moved and spoke. Sometimes people stared at her in the streets or whispered behind her back. David could see the fear and confusion in their eyes, and he worried more every day. One afternoon, as they walked through a busy market, a group of people noticed Lyra. Some were curious, but others were frightened. David quickly held her hand and led her away. He knew that if word spread about Lyra, they both could be in danger. But Lyra didn't want to hide forever. She wanted to live freely, to be accepted. At home, their conversations became serious. Lyra kept asking the question that weighed heavily on both of them. "Why did you leave me, David?" David looked at her sadly. "I don't know," he said, "honestly. I can't remember leaving you or our world. It's like a part of my life is missing." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "You left without saying goodbye. You left me waiting. I don't understand why." David wished he had answers. He wanted to comfort her, but he felt lost himself. He began to think about what might have happened in the past. Was it fear? Was it confusion? Or something else that made him leave? While they struggled with these questions, a new danger appeared. Strange people began to watch David and Lyra from a distance. They seemed interested in Lyra, as if they knew about her origins. David felt a cold fear. Were these people from the government? Or were they from Lyra's world, sent to bring her back? One night, David heard noises outside his apartment. He looked through the window and saw two men in dark clothes watching the building. His heart raced. He quietly told Lyra, and they decided to be careful. Lyra's face showed worry, but also determination. "They want to take me away," she said. "But I will not go without answers." David agreed. He knew he had to protect her no matter what. They began making plans, ways to hide, to stay safe, and to find the truth behind these strangers. This time, David's memories started to return slowly. Small flashes came to him, moments from a life he had forgotten. He saw himself in a strange city filled with light, standing beside Lyra and other alien beings. He remembered feelings of love and duty, but also fear and confusion. One memory was clear. A great war had come to their world, and David had been forced to leave to protect Earth. He had made a choice to leave, hoping it was the best way to save both worlds. But leaving had caused pain, especially to Lyra. David shared these memories with Lyra. She listened quietly, understanding the difficult choice he had to make. But she also told him how lonely she had been, how much she had hoped he would come back. Their bond grew stronger as they shared these truths. They were no longer just two strangers. They were connected by history, by pain, and by hope. One evening, Lyra spoke of her daughter again. "She is lost in a place between worlds," Lyra said softly. "I need to find her before it is too late." David promised to help. Together, they studied maps of the stars and old texts that described places beyond Earth. They learned about dangers that awaited them, but they did not give up. David realized that the journey ahead was not just about protecting Lyra. It was about healing the wounds of the past and building a future where they could both belong. They prepared for the challenges, knowing that others would try to stop them. But their determination was strong. As days passed, they faced more obstacles. People questioned David's behavior. Friends and neighbors noticed Lyra's strange ways. David had to lie to protect her. It was hard, but he never gave up. One night while they were talking, Lyra took David's hand and said, "We are not alone. We have each other." David smiled. "Yes, together we can face anything." Their story was far from over. They had enemies to face, mysteries to solve, and a daughter to find. But they were ready to walk the path side by side, no matter where it led. The days grew heavier with challenges, but David and Lyra grew closer. David could see the sadness in Lyra's eyes every time she thought about her daughter. Finding her was the most important mission now. Lyra believed that her daughter was somewhere in between the worlds. Not quite on Earth, but not fully in Lyra's home world either. This mysterious space was dangerous and hard to reach, but David and Lyra knew they had to try. David spent many nights studying strange maps Lyra had brought. These maps showed stars and galaxies far beyond human knowledge. Lyra explained that her people could travel through special portals that connected different worlds. These portals were rare and needed strong energy to open. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet apartment, Lyra told David more about her daughter. "She is young, full of light," Lyra said softly. "She was taken by forces that want to control her power. If I do not find her soon, she might be lost forever." David felt a deep pain in his heart. He wanted to protect this child as much as he wanted to protect Lyra. He promised, "We will find her, no matter what." Together, they prepared for the journey. Lyra taught David how to use some of her people's technology. It was strange and difficult to understand, but David was determined. He learned to use a small device that could open a portal to the space between worlds, but only for a short time. Their first attempt to open the portal was not easy. They had to wait for the right moment when the stars aligned perfectly. When it happened, a glowing circle appeared in David's living room, humming softly with energy. Lyra took David's hand. "Are you ready?" she asked. David nodded, his heart pounding. "Let's go." They stepped through the portal together. On the other side, they found themselves in a strange place. It was not dark, but filled with shimmering light and strange shapes floating around. It felt like a dream, both beautiful and frightening. They walked carefully, searching for any sign of Lyra's daughter. Suddenly, they heard a soft cry. Following the sound, they found a small girl trapped inside a glowing cage. Her eyes were wide with fear, but when she saw Lyra, her face brightened with hope. Lyra rushed forward, touching the cage. "Don't be afraid, my child, I'm here." The cage began to shake, and with a burst of light, it opened. The girl ran to Lyra's arms, hugging her tightly. David watched, feeling a mix of relief and happiness. But the danger was not over. The place around them started to change. Shadows moved closer, and strange voices whispered warnings. Lyra held her daughter close. "We must leave now," she said urgently. They ran back to the portal, but it was closing fast. David helped Lyra and the girl jump through just in time. They landed back in the apartment, safe but exhausted. The reunion was beautiful, but also brought new questions. Who had taken the girl? Why? And what would happen next? David and Lyra knew that their journey was far from over. They had found the daughter, but enemies still wanted to control her power. They had to protect her and prepare for what was coming. David looked at Lyra, seeing strength and love in her eyes. "We will face whatever comes," he said firmly. "Together." Lyra nodded, tears of joy and hope shining on her cheeks. "Thank you, David, for staying with me, for not leaving." David smiled, feeling that this time he would never leave. He had found his purpose, his family, and a new home. Their story had reached a turning point. From that moment on, they would fight to protect the ones they loved no matter the cost. After the safe return through the portal, life for David, Lyra, and her daughter changed forever. The little girl, whom Lyra named Arya, brought a new light into their home. Her laughter filled the rooms, and her curiosity about Earth was endless. But with joy came responsibility and new challenges that tested their strength every day. David watched as Lyra cared for Arya with deep love and fierce protectiveness. Arya was different from any child he had known. She had special abilities, small flashes of energy that sparkled from her fingertips, and moments when she seemed to understand things beyond human knowledge. David realized that keeping Arya safe was not just about hiding her, it was about understanding her powers and preparing for the dangers they might face. The strangers who had once watched David and Lyra did not disappear. They continued to search for Arya, wanting to control her because of her unique gifts. David knew they had to be careful. He worked hard to create a safe space in their home and to stay alert to any signs of danger. At the same time, David, Lyra, and Arya began to build a new life together. David taught Arya about Earth, the simple pleasures like tasting ice cream, playing in the rain, and looking at the stars. Arya's eyes sparkled with wonder at everything new, and her laughter was a constant reminder of hope. Lyra shared stories of her own world, of peace and kindness, and the importance of using their gifts for good. She encouraged Arya to be brave and kind, to never be afraid of who she was. Despite the happiness growing in their home, David and Lyra never forgot the challenges ahead. They knew that some forces would never stop hunting Arya, and that protecting her meant preparing for a future where she could live freely and safely. David began training with Lyra. He learned about her people's ways, about their strength and their peace. Together, they practiced controlling Arya's powers, teaching her to use them wisely. It was not easy, but each small success gave them hope. Their bond grew stronger every day. David and Lyra became partners in every sense, sharing their fears and dreams, supporting each other through the unknown. David often thought back to the night they first met, how a lost woman from another world had changed his life forever. One evening, as they watched the stars together, Arya asked, "Will we always be safe here?" Lyra smiled gently and replied, "We will do everything to keep our family safe, and one day, we will help others like us find peace too." David took Lyra's hand and said, "No matter what comes, we face it together. We are stronger as one." Their story was no longer just about two worlds meeting. It was about love, hope, and the future they would build. David had found a new family, a new purpose, and a new home, one where no one would ever be left behind. And so, their journey continued, filled with challenges, discoveries, and the unbreakable bond of those who choose to stand by each other no matter what.